Before I get back to the castle of the quest, I'm going to impart another lesson. This one concerning wandering monsters and how many appear. Lenny Burkitt asked me this question. So Lenny, if you're listening, this is my 2 pence. In Monsters and Treasure, Gygax and Arneson provide a number appearing column in the monster reference table. It is vitally important to take note of the asterisk that appears next to the title of this column. Always take note of any asterisks, as the whole work is littered with them. They offer vitally important clues. The asterisk I am referring to has the following accompanying note attached. It reads, "Referee's option, increase or decrease according to party concerned." And here is the most important part. Used primarily only for outdoor encounters. Maybe Gary should have used his famous capital lettering for this statement, as I think I recall this being missed by some gamers who think it's quite average to walk into a dungeon chamber filled with 400 goblins. This is definitely not the case. But if these figures are for outdoor encounters, then how on earth are underworld encounters handled? The short answer is, read Underworld and Wilderness Adventures. It isn't organised nor written with the greatest of clarity, but it is just 30 odd pages of information, so my advice is always to dig deep and keep up the study, because you will be pleasantly surprised at the amount of information that is in there that you thought was missing, and in turn, all those presumptions that players make about what's in there, it probably never was. Don't presume to know, instead, read to learn. Open up a copy of Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, and turn to the pages that cover Underworld monsters. Underneath the heading, Number of Wandering Monsters Appearing, you'll note the following text. If the level beneath the surface roughly corresponds with the level of the monster, then the number of monsters will be based on a single creature modified by type. That is, orcs and the like will be in groups, and the number of adventurers in the party. A party of from 1 to 3 would draw the basic number of monsters, 4 to 6 would bring about twice as many, and so on. The referee is advised to exercise his discretion in regard to exact determinations, for the number of variables is too great to make a hard and fast rule. Let's break this down. If the level beneath the surface roughly corresponds with the level of the monster, then the number of monsters will be based on a single creature. I think the obvious interpretation here is, if you are on level 1 of the dungeon, and you run into a 1-hit die monster, then this will be a single monster. On level 2, there would be 2 of these 1-hit die monsters, so these base numbers are relatively small. However, the next part of the text mentions that this should be modified by type. So basically, if the type of monster encountered is the type to normally keep within a group, then there would be a group rather than a single monster. The text finally goes on to say that a party of from 1 to 3 would draw the basic number of monsters, 4 to 6 would bring about twice as many, and so on. So if your party of 5 adventurers on a level 1 dungeon ran into a wandering monster, and the roll indicated Ogre, this is a 4-hit die monster, so most certainly this encounter would only bring about a single ogre. But as the party has 5 characters, twice as many would be brought about so 2 ogres would come. But consider this party of first level characters who would suffer 4 attacks in melee by each ogre. The last line in the text I quoted is, "The referee is advised to exercise his discretion in regard to exact determinations, for the number of variables is too great to make a hard and fast rule." This is, I think, singly the most important line in the text. If we follow rules as presented through a lack of experience refereeing the game, then we might go with 2 ogres. However, through experience of unpleasantries like total party wipeouts, because in hindsight the party were clearly inferior in strength, lessons are learned, numbers adjudicated. So I would say in summary, don't glance at the monster reference table, then proceed to cram several hundred goblins into a tiny room. Read the rules carefully, follow the guidelines given in the Wandering Monsters section of Book 2. Read up on the monster descriptions to get a feel for how they compose themselves. And most importantly, consider the level of challenge you want to provide. Experiment, learn, and adjudicate. As you will see in my campaign videos, I often misjudge the challenge as OD&D is deadly. Throughout my own solo gaming experiences, I am able to refine the numbers as I experience encounters in the endless underworld halls of my own world. Just keep playing, and if the medieval churchyard of your hometown is littered with fresh graves as one by one the heroes fall, remember that more heroes will come seeking their own fortunes. They are born every day, but only true legends survive. Now, let's return to the game. The party rest and gather their bearings for the next 2 turns following their pursuit from the hobgoblins and their giant rats. There is no encounter while they do this. Having now lost all 3 of their fighters, Magnus, Thraena and Lyria, as well as their cleric and more than half of their retainers, the party are extremely vulnerable. 2 Lightfoot bandits, 1 halfling fighter and a magic user remain. The risk now very much outweighs the reward. Having given up 400 gold pieces to the bandits and losing 80 silver to Lyria's corpse, the party still hold a respectable 692 gold pieces, and have fought victoriously against an array of monsters. They have also been in the dungeon for more than 12 hours. It's time to go home. Their journey out will take about 5 turns, subject to some checks to open doors, and a couple of checks for wandering monsters. I'll adjudicate the movements on the map and run the numbers, then summarise here. The party make it out of the dungeon successfully, without further danger, and so ends the first delve. But the session does not end there. Now we hit the books to take care of all the downtime bookkeeping. First, regarding the remaining bandits, I think Alara would want them to remain in service, especially due to the decimation of the party numbers. So a retainer loyalty check will be needed to find out what the bandits decide. As you would in chainmail, I make morale checks for the whole unit, and not each individual retainer, so 1 check for both Lightfoot bandits. The bandits started with a +3 loyalty bonus, and the roll is made on 3d6. They score a 19, which means that the bandits need never check morale, and of course, they will stay in service, which brings us naturally to the player's support and upkeep. The Underworld and Wilderness book says, player characters must pay gold pieces equal to 1% of their experience points for support and upkeep, until such a time as they build a stronghold. It does not say how frequent, but considering that retainers are paid monthly, I presume support and upkeep is also to be paid monthly. Correct me in the comments if I am wrong. I've dug through the various text and haven't found confirmation of this to date, so my ruling for now is that the characters pay monthly expenses, and I have drafted up a worksheet on paper to track these. Running the numbers, Finnick pays 7 gold, Alara 8, and the retainers take a further 4, as Lightfoot costs 2 gold per month each. It's important to note that I am running a 1-1 time campaign, as advised in the back of Underworld and Wilderness Adventures. However, to compensate for solo play, and the fact that I take time to produce these videos, you could consider this a kind of hybrid of 1-1 time, maybe, because technically I'm not breaking the rules as they are written. When my party are taking part in a dungeon expedition, the rules say this takes 1 week of game time. My first expedition started on the 30th of July 2023, so a week takes us to the 6th of August 2023. At the time of recording, I'm ahead of this date, but I will fill in some of this time with my downtime activities. No healing is required as the surviving characters took no damage. So on the 6th of August they are able to commence a recruitment campaign to fill out the party for the next delve in hopes that they are less vulnerable next time. The party hire servitors to look around town for applicants, which costs them 200 gold pieces, and through this process they successfully recruit 2 heavyfoot bandits with +1 loyalty. The campaign lasts 3 days, bringing the campaign date up to the 9th of August 2023. In regards to my tracking of time, I will adjudicate as necessary to the good of the game, but time will be strictly measured so that if contrasting interests between any adventuring groups or the like ever occurs, the strict and measured timekeeping will dictate the outcome in a balanced way. This is, for me, the real purpose of 1-1 time, in my opinion, but I will stick to it as much as possible, which may just be 100% of the time, but maybe, just maybe, I will need to pause its passing on occasion. I'll never say never. As far as dungeon expeditions go, I have been able to comfortably do these across several recording sessions and catch up later as I gain a week of game time for these. But I have overshot the first expedition by a whole month, but I can now use the downtime between adventures to catch up with the real world date, so that's what I will do. Before the next delve begins, I want to cover the rules I used for handling the recruitment campaign. The little brown books offer some guidance but no specifics. They leave that up to the referee, which I think, considering the infinite variables, is a good choice. For solo play, these infinite variables need to be tied down a little in order to create a game which limits in some ways the temptation to create advantages for the solo player, which would otherwise not be present. Instead of creating advantages, it's important to keep the game challenge balanced. I keep that in mind when I create mechanics such as the ones I'm about to discuss with you. Here is how I handle recruitment campaigns in solo OD&D. Feel free to try them for yourself. My basic inspiration for this method is from the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, which expands on the mechanics for hiring retainers. However, I have adapted this for solo play and fit the mechanics within the scope of OD&D, so that the rules as written remain unaltered by the mechanics I have introduced. In Men and Magic, it says that non-player characters can be hired as follows. Only the lowest level of character types can be hired. The player wishing to hire a non-player character advertises by posting notices at inns and taverns, frequents public places seeking the desired hireling, or sends messengers to whatever place the desired character type would be found. This costs money and takes time, and the referee must determine expenditures. The AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide offers some guidelines on the cost of such methods, as well as percentages given for their effectiveness. I used this as a guide to put together a table that works with OD&D, and the methods suggested therein. The way this works is that the solo player will roll to determine the costs and effectiveness for each method prior to their selection. Once a suitable method or combination of methods has been selected, the player should choose the types of retainers wanted. Each type has an initial cost, which starts at 100 gold pieces, as the rulebook dictates is the minimum, and some types have specific assurances that they require. Each initial cost provides a base percentage chance that the retainer will be interested in the role. To pique the interests of potential candidates, every additional 100 gold pieces added to the initial offer will increase the interest of the potential candidate by a further percentage. This percentage depends on the type of retainer being sought. For example, a heavy foot retainer requires a minimum offer of 100 gold, and this provides a base 35% chance of the candidate applying for the role. For every additional 100 gold offered, a further 10% chance will be added. A cleric will only show a 10% interest for the initial 100 gold, and only a further 4% for each additional 100, as they are less interested in gold, and assurances they require will be access to a temple. Basic equipment must be purchased for them as well. The overall chance is capped at 55%, so no further monetary offers after this percentage has been reached will have any influence. This is to ensure that random chance will still be involved, even when very high offers are made. To allow some flexibility, so that players can still have a go at hiring when funds are low, I have decided that if suitable funds are not available to pay the minimum initial cost, then there will be no bonus to the percentage chance of receiving an applicant. Additionally, if assurances cannot be met in some capacity, then there will be a -5 penalty to this chance for each assurance that is not met. Once the retainer types desired have been decided, the total number of available retainers must be determined. This will be based on the general distribution as influenced by the population spread of the local area and the type of area, i.e., is it an active adventuring area, a typical area, or somewhere that is particularly settled. I put a table together as a reference for the individual distributions of each type of recruit as per each type of area. The town in which my adventuring party has based themselves is indeed an active adventuring area. So let's look at Knights at Arms. These are the same as Men at Arms, but I've changed their identifier for reasons of inclusivity. In an active adventuring area, there will be 1 Knight at Arms per 100 people, or 1 in 2,500 for a settled and stayed area. For a fighter, there will be 1 in 400 people in an active adventuring area, or 1 in 10,000 for a settled and stayed area. So if the town in which the adventuring party is hiring has a population of 5,000 and the area is active for adventuring, then there will be 50 knights at arms and 12 fighters. Not only will the recruitment campaign be affected by the number of retainers of a desired type available across the populace, it will also be affected by the length of service required. The most suitable measure for this is months. For each month of service requested, after the first month, there will be a -5% penalty to the overall chance of receiving an applicant. There is also the important conversation to be had regarding the spoils. For each percentage of treasure shares offered, the chance of receiving an applicant will be increased by increments. I also put a table together to detail these increments. Knights at Arms get a 1% increase in their interest per 1% of treasure shares offered. A cleric and dwarf's interest is only raised by 0.25%, albeit for different reasons. Dwarves are greedier, but clerics are just less interested in monetary gains. To handle any uncertainty, because as a recruiter, a character might be unsure what the percentage will be in the final offer, as, for example, they want to offer an equal share which will be dependent on the final number of retainers who join the party. In these circumstances, a percentage range can be noted, such as 15% to 50%. And so, in a case where a recruitment campaign has been sprung for 5 adventurers to join one player character who is offering an equal share of treasure, the percent chance bonus towards receiving an applicant will be a range which can be rolled on the die for exact determination. The time required for the recruitment campaign will be from 2 to 8 days of game time, 1d6 plus 2. Running the numbers works as follows. Take the overall effectiveness of the recruitment campaign, as per the advertising expenditures, then determine the percentage chance that the recruitment campaign will reach each of the available candidates. To do this, multiply the overall effectiveness of the campaign by the number of available candidates. For example, a campaign with 40% effectiveness and 4 available candidates would be calculated as 0.4 multiplied by 4, which equals 1.6. Rounding to the nearest whole number gives a result of 2. Therefore, only 2 of 4 candidates can be reached. Deciding which 2 out of the 4 is a matter of rolling a die. In this case, a d4 with duplicates being re-rolled. Of the number of potential applicants reached, there will be a % chance that they will apply for the position offered. This depends on the strength of the offer of employment, which is dictated by all the bonuses and penalties to the % chance of receiving an applicant. Add all these together to determine the final % chance, and then multiply the chance by the number of potential applicants reached. For example, if there are 17 potential applicants reached by the recruitment campaign, and the initial offer has a 60% chance of tempting these potential applicants to apply, the calculation would be 0.6 multiplied by 17, which equals 10 rounded down. Therefore, 10 applicants apply for the position. Any ad hoc bonuses can be applied at plus 5% for each general extra benefit being offered, or 15% if it's something directly applicable to the class of the applicant. This may seem at first quite complicated, so I will walk you through the recruitment campaign I ran for my adventuring party. Before hiring, the party have taken 4 losses. I haven't really defined any hard and fast rules for character numbers as of yet, but what makes sense immediately to me, if I had a party of 6 to begin with, then it would stand to reason that I will roll up 4 more characters to bring this number back up to 6. If this was a group game with 6 players, the presumption would be that players who lost their characters would roll up new ones. So I did indeed roll up 4 new ones. My scores were as follows: Strength 6, Intelligence 12, Wisdom 14, Dexterity 11, Constitution 13, Charisma 12. This character will be a cleric. Strength 7, Intelligence 7, Wisdom 13, Dexterity 15, Constitution 12, Charisma 7. Another cleric. Strength 15, Intelligence 10, Wisdom 10, Dexterity 11, Constitution 14, Charisma 11. A new fighter. Strength 11, Intelligence 8, Wisdom 10, Dexterity 10, Constitution 12, Charisma 14. This character will be a dwarven fighter. Now, what I actually did this time is spend as little as possible on equipment to free up some extra gold for hiring retainers. For my fighters I went for spears at 1 gold apiece, chain armour without shields, and light crossbows, as ranged weaponry does seem to offer a great advantage. I also bought some basic gear which included backpack, water skin, torches, which I omitted from the dwarf's equipment, rations, and of course quarrels for the crossbows. The clerics are kitted out the same, but the spear is swapped for a mace, and I've included a wooden cross. After subtracting these costs from the character's starting gold, I pull the rest together, which leaves 127 gold pieces towards the spoils taken from the first expedition. This gives them a respectable sum to spend on recruits. The dwarf will hire, as he has the advantage of high charisma. The dwarf aims to hire up to 5 heavy foot. I roll up costs and their effectiveness before selecting the method used. Posting up notices will cost 400 gold pieces and has a 20% effectiveness. Hiring servitors will cost 200 gold pieces and has a 30% effectiveness. Using both these methods will be 600 gold pieces and will be 40% effective. The dwarf decides to hire servitors to find their retainers. The population of the last redoubt, which is the adventurer's home base, is 3,000. And due to the close vicinity of the Castle of the Quest, where the dungeon lies, which is not even a day's journey away, the area can be considered an active adventuring area. So there are 300 knight-at-arms available. So the calculation is 0.3 multiplied by 30, which equals 9. So this means the campaign reaches 9 candidates. Next, I looked at the chance any of these 9 candidates will apply. The hiring is for 1 month, so there is no penalty there. An initial down payment of 100 gold is offered, which gives a 35% bonus. No assurances are required and no shares of treasure are offered. So the total chance to apply is just 35%. 0.35 multiplied by 9 equals 3. Therefore, 3 of the 9 candidates reached by the servitors apply for the job. At this point, a formal offer was made to each applicant, which is handled separately for each NPC, and the necessary reaction rolls were made, as well as a further roll for the whole company to determine their initial loyalty. 2 of the 3 applicants accepted the position, and they will start with +1 loyalty. The recruitment campaign took 3 days. Before I get to the next expedition, I want to discuss how we move forward with this game. Up until now, my descriptions have largely been matter of fact without much trust. A watcher who goes by Vikasin left me a comment about this after I posted my first video, and it got me thinking how I can add in a bit more flavour. For inspiration, I always look through the oldest books first. What does OD&D say about it? Well, not much really. Space limitation was an issue, but it does say a good referee will have noise corridors, moaning, clanking, etc. and rooms from whence come shuffling or muttering sounds. Now this is a great clue, because if we look to the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, you can see how Gary expanded upon this very topic. I consulted the appendices where I rediscovered the dungeon dressing tables, which provides some random entries for noise, odours, air currents, and so on. Perfect. Gary says use these for unpopulated areas to round out otherwise drab places. This is exactly what we need, and we only had to look back to 1979 to find it. So to make things more interesting, I think I'm going to roll on some of these tables to bring my dungeon to life a little and add some character. I will leave out the rolling on these tables to keep the pace more natural. Gary suggests some intervals for these bits of interest. 60-foot intervals for adding general features, 120-foot intervals for noise, and so on. To incorporate this, I've added references to these tables directly to my random dungeon generation tables, with percentage chances based on the intervals Gary suggests. So for example, if I roll up a passage that continues for 60 feet, there will be a 50% chance there will be a noise of some description. So this will space the noises out at roughly 120-foot intervals. There will be a 90% chance of a general feature, so these will occur mostly every 60 feet. I have also hard-coded them into a detailed time tracker I've put together for this campaign, as I won't always be generating new sections of dungeon. Sometimes I will be sending the party across large sections of the map, which have already been discovered on their previous delves. Let's give this a try in the next session.